this is Kyle from Strong Dads. Strong Dads wants to thank Crimer Beer House for sponsoring today's Strong Dads podcast. The beer house was started in 1982 by the Crimer family. Since that time, they have become a Cincinnati favorite. If you're looking for an incredible meal and an incredible setting, you have to try Crimer's Beer House down on Route 128 in Cleves, Ohio. All right, hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Strong Dads here with Merle. Merle, how you doing today?
I'm doing good.
Good. Getting ready for the 4th of July.
Getting ready for the 4th, man.
Heck yeah.
It's smoking hot outside.
That's
it's what
right.
4th of July is supposed to be, right?
That's right. I can't believe it's already July. That's nuts.
I know.
It's like the time flies by, especially when you're sitting at home, for the last 4 months.
Yeah. When I was in the school business, man, believe it or not, like 4th of July was a big Debbie Downer day for me because after 4th of July, it was like being on a slip and slide right into the school year.
Right back into school.
Because usually by the 3rd or 4th week of July, I was back into school.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, so 4th of July was like, if I had a project, I better get it done because it's almost over.
Yes. Well, very cool. Yeah. So tomorrow, as you guys well know, is 4th of July. So 4th of July in my profession is a terrible day to work. Terrible day to work.
What, a fireman? Come on, you should love that, right?
Well, I love in the sense of yes, I get to fight fire, but I dislike the madness that goes on.
Oh yeah,
it is just utter mayhem. But that's all right, I guess. So.
Yeah. So, how often do you get caught into stuff that was just flat out stupid from fireworks?
I've been with the city of Dayton for 6 years now, and I have worked the 4th of July twice, and it is a lot of dumpster fires. It is a lot of grass fires. Streets on fire, if you can picture that, streets actually catching on fire. It's bizarre.
What do you do, like throw gas all over the street and just catch it on fire?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not like a good idea.
Some people say that the citizens of Dayton just enjoy having a good time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that could get a little crazy.
It is. But yeah, so anyways, today we're coming to you guys. We're going to talk a little bit about the idea of the 4th of July. We're going to talk about patriotism, just kind of the current state of everything going on in our country, and hopefully break it down and hopefully get some good takeaways for you and your family to talk about, and hopefully have some good discussions for you as a strong dad to talk to your kids about the whole idea of patriotism, this awesome country that we live in, and hopefully kind of restore some of the idea of patriotism and kind of what that means for us.
When you and I were just talking about this before we started recording, in our lifetime, you don't always understand what generations before thought of or what their level of patriotism was before your generation. And, I'm thinking through my kids' eyes right now, my younger kids, and they don't really have the same vision of a patriotic America that I may have had or you may have had growing up. And right now, I mean, this is not going to be a show about how bad everything is, but right now there's a lot of ill feeling towards or within this country.
Yeah.
People, feeling like things are not right, and there's a lot of infighting among Americans of discontent. So, what I'd like to do, rather than talk about why everybody's mad or upset, is talk about, really, what is the whole idea of patriotism, and what's our job as dads? If we're trying to build the next generation, how do we handle this? Okay.
Right.
So anyway, that's where we're going to go with this today, and hopefully it'll make some sense.
Hopefully. But before we definitely jump into that, we got some really cool stuff we're going to talk about, but we definitely want to thank our sponsors. So definitely today, Strong Dads would like to thank the Crimer's Beer House for coming alongside of us. The beer house was started in 1982 by the Crimer family, and since that time, they've definitely become a Cincinnati favorite. So if you're looking for an incredible meal in an incredible setting, you definitely have to go down on Route 128 and check out the Crimer's Beer House.
Sounds good. Yeah, so also Strong Dads wants to thank Mansfield Insurance Agency located in Bright, Indiana, for being a sponsor of the Strong Dads podcast. Established in 1981, Mansfield Insurance Agency has been dedicated to the individuals and businesses in Bright, Indiana, but also serving folks in Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. So for all your insurance needs, contact Mansfield Insurance. So I do want to go over a couple of different things just to get us started, somewhat as a reference point. There was an article about a year and a half or so ago in the New York Post. So this actually, the reason why I thought this article was kind of interesting was because it is not actually talking about the climate immediately today that we're seeing. This is about a year and a half or 2 years ago. And it just talked about like what is the what's the trend looking like in terms of being pro-American or not so pro, okay? So this is interesting kind of stuff. And only 45% of U.S. adults identified as being extremely proud to be Americans. Those 70% said that they were proud, according to one particular poll. So, again, just I want to look at that 45%. Like, so less than half were claiming to be extremely proud. 70%, like there was a level of proudness.
Sure.
Okay. The extreme pride number is the lowest number since Gallup poll was taking questions. Started in 2001. This was the second consecutive year that it was below 50. So when it dropped below 50, that was pretty noticeable that the extreme patriotism, the pride, has dropped. So the trend, and I wouldn't even imagine how low it might be right now.
Yeah.
You know. So anyway, I think that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, and you know, I think, you know, as we begin this conversation, as we talk about it, I think it's good to note that, like, Merle and I would never claim that the country we live in is perfect. There's flaws that we have dealt with as a country, but kind of just like us as men, like we have a starting point, and then we have goals in mind. We have things that we want to achieve, us as men, and I think the same could be said about our country. Like, our country started in a point that maybe wasn't so pretty, and we've kind of progressed to where we are today. And there's been, you know, there's always going to be bumps in the road. There's always going to be issues. Yeah. We talk about storms in marriage. Mm-hmm. Like, there's going to be storms that have happened in our country. And just the idea of patriotism, a lot of times gets wrapped up in politics. And I think it's also important to note that, in my eyes, I think they are different. You know, the idea that we do have politics, we do have Republicans, Democrats, liberals, conservatives. We do have those, is part of why I consider myself to be a patriot. I love this country because we do have things like that. We do have the ability to have different parties that yes, politics play a part into being a patriot, but also I just think it's important they are separate in some regards.
Yeah, you know, I think we get confused with patriotism. Means some people think you should always be happy if you're a patriot. Right. You should always love what you see, and you know, it's that old phrase, you know, back in the good old days, you know.
Back in my day.
You can't even say that like I can. Back in the good old days. And, you know, that's a funny phrase just because that is a phrase of perception. Perception of what you thought it was from where you are standing right now. And it's, you know, the good old days. Even in the good old days, man, there's just not even a measurement of perfection, you know, within a country. And, you know, the idea there is, I'll give you a perfect country when you give me a perfect group of people, you know, in other words, our entire population perfect. And so because of that, there's never going to be this like total utopia. And again, if that is your goal, you are going to be having a feeling of, I can't be patriotic. I can't favor what we're doing here. Right. And so I really just want to encourage us, you know, in this discussion to wrap our head around, well, wait, you know, what is it to be patriotic?
Right.
Right? And it's, if you're stuck around the idea of you're looking for utopia and I'm not going to be happy until I'm there, it's just never going to happen.
Yeah.
I think it's called heaven, actually, right?
That's absolutely true. Yeah. So let's get into a little bit of you know, why do we love this country and want to continue to be a part of the solution? Because again, we could sit around here and talk about the current climate that is our country. We can continue to complain about it and say all the things that are wrong with it. But I think it's important just to come out in a different way, especially as us as believers in Christ and us as strong dads. Like, we have to understand that we're going to look a little bit different. and that's a good thing. We should want to put ourselves in the minority when it comes to this, because you can go on any news channel right now, you can go on any social media outlet, and you can find a lot of negativity when it comes to our country. But at the end of the day, I think it's really important to teach your family, to teach your kids the idea that we live in a country where we get to have those feelings. And yes, we do have disagreements, but that's a good thing. That's what separates America from any other country in the world, is we're allowed to have different ideas. We're allowed to disagree with what our government's doing, and we can vocalize that. So I just think let's kind of get into the idea of why we love this country and we want to continue to protect it.
Yeah, and again, we love it. That doesn't mean it's perfect,
right?
You know, and like you said, you know, I love this country because in this country, people have the ability to be free in the gifts that they were blessed with by God. Yeah. In other words, if I'm a carpenter, I can be a carpenter here. Yeah. You know, if I'm an engineer, I can be an engineer. I'm not told when I'm 8 years old, this is what you'll do for a living. Right. You know, and there's enough freedom in that I may not be able to get there as quickly as I want or as perfectly as I want, but there's a path to get there. Yeah. Okay. And there's multiple options. You know, maybe I am not going to become an engineer the traditional way, but there are still many other options to become an engineer. And, you know, that's why across the country, we have young people from Asia and from South America flocking to the United States to get their education because they can't get it in the place that they are. And so there's lots of different opportunity that way. Again, not perfect at all, but to the idea that we still have opportunity here. Yep. So and that's a huge thing.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I was going to say. It's just the idea that you do have those opportunities, that you know, there's a lot of countries that can't say they have the opportunities, and they can't say that they have, you know, freedom that we have in those opportunities. You know, I mean, look at the very foundation of our country. It says that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men were created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with a certain unalienable right, that among these life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Like, I just think it's that we have the ability to we have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It doesn't say it's not guaranteeing happiness, that we can pursue that happiness because of those opportunities that we have.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that that's huge, and I think we overlook that whole idea that you have the freedom and the right to pursue. Yeah. Like you said, not a guarantee. Yep. You know, and not everybody is dealt the exact same biological cards or circumstances, but there are certain things that you have been given, and life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And so those are big. You don't get those in Russia, and you don't get those in a lot of other places in this world. And so I think it's just important as I talk to my kids what options they have. Yeah. You know, I've talked with our kids about the idea of my one son does a lot of grass cutting, and a lot of the guys that he works with are from South America.
Okay, yeah.
And so he is 16 years old, and he's working with guys that are in their late 20s and 30s, and half of them don't speak English, and they're up here, and they're on lawn crews and stuff like that. And I just said, well, why are they here? Asking him that question. Why are they here doing that? That's hard work. You know, why do they come up here? And even at his age, he's like, well, because they can make money and they can make a living here. Yeah. I mean, it's like, okay. So there are still lots of great opportunities, and no, not perfect, but lots of opportunity.
For sure. And, you know, as we continue to kind of talk about why we love and want to continue to protect this country, like, let's talk a little bit about the idea of freedom of expression.
Do we really want to do that? Maybe you should be quiet right now.
Okay, I'll be quiet. So, yes, golly, this to me, you know, again, with the current climate, like, people will be like, well, if not America, then where? Mm-hmm. And, man, this is the one that I hold on to. Mm-hmm. Like, there's so much that goes into the idea of freedom of expression. We can talk about the freedom of religion, that we can praise and worship any God we want, and we can vocalize that.
Yeah.
We are the only country that has a First Amendment right, and I hold that so true. I mean, like when I ask my girls, like, why is America, like, why do we love America? To me, this is what I tell them: we love America because we can say whatever we want. We can express ourselves verbally however we want. And to me, man, that is so powerful, and something in a lot of ways I think a lot of people take for granted, that not every country you can say whatever you want. And this is where I struggle with the idea that I don't want that to go. Like that, to me, your freedom of expression is a huge thing that makes America so much different than everywhere else.
Because the freedom of expression allows us to do things like protest. Yep. It allows us to stand up. And the problem that we run into is we get into disagreements about what people are standing up for. Okay,
yes.
But the idea that they get to stand up. Right, and if there's a big enough groundswell in doing that, if there's enough energy behind it, we have a mechanism for change. Yeah. Whereas in so many other countries, if you're in China and all of a sudden that starts, which it does, we see riots and stuff there, but all of a sudden people are either they're removed, their life may be ended, they are thrown in prison, and so it's a whole different level. Whereas here, even though it gets messy and is ugly, you get a chance to be heard, and again, if there's enough energy behind it, you can actually see change. And again, that's a huge freedom that we have.
Yeah. And I mean, and just like I was saying before with the idea of freedom of religion, we can have that is the cool part of America. Like it doesn't say you have to believe in this or you have to worship like this. The idea that America, they always say America is the melting pot. Like we have people from all different walks of life that believe in all different things, and that's okay. Like that's what makes us different. We don't have the government telling us you have to worship, you have to believe like this, and just the idea that when you kind of put in the idea of freedom of expression, freedom of religion, the idea that's where the idea of patriotism kind of comes in. Those are the things that I would love to see more people hold on to, because that's what makes us different than every other country. Yeah. And if we lose things like that, then we really lose kind of our identity, what makes us different.
Yeah, one of the big reasons that people come to this country is, one of them is to make a living. The other one is to have the freedom to express and practice their faith.
Absolutely.
And, I think there's frustration with that, though, because people start to get so entrenched, and, here we are, we're Christians, and we wished everybody thought like we did.
Sure.
Okay, and when they don't, even people are like, oh, man, they need to be more Bible-believing, they need to be this. Well, you have the freedom here. Yeah. You have the freedom and to make that choice, and at least the government is not going to be the thing.
Exactly.
What we have to do, I mean, if you're going to continue to think that your Christianity is important and worth living, you have to show it. Absolutely. Right? You have to show the love of Christ. Yeah. If the government says this is the faith, that's anybody that tells me I have to do something, right away I go into a defensive mode. Yeah. But if we really want the Christian faith to grow in this country, it doesn't need to be mandated. It just needs to be lived.
Right.
It needs to be lived. And all of a sudden people go, wow, there's a huge benefit in that. Or right. I see the goodness in that. And, we have to be really careful when we see people protesting against evangelicals, and people it's like, well, you really don't want the government coming in, because if they come in and dictate for your faith, you'll be happy. But what if they come in and dictate against your faith? Yep. And that's what we're running the risk of. That's why we talk about the idea of, they're taking God out of schools and churches and all that. Well, with freedom comes responsibility.
Absolutely.
And if we don't use our freedom responsibly, if we're jamming it on people and forcing them, that's where we get our kickbacks. And so we've got to maintain this freedom, but we have to be responsible with the freedom.
Right. And that just goes to that idea that again, I mean, look at it in the eyes of a kid. If you, as a parent, tell your kid you have to do something, are they going to really be into it? Where if you allow them to make that choice, like, hey, I want to do whatever, that they're so much more apt to be enjoying it so much more. And the same can be said, look at our military. Like, it's a choice to join the military now.
It's a volunteer.
But because of that, there's something inside of people who join the military that they feel like it's a calling. Like, I want to do this. It's not something where they're saying you have to do this. And again, the same when it comes to the idea of religion and who we want to worship, who we want to believe in. The idea that you make it your own then. Yeah. Because if I force something on you, or if the government forces something on you and says you have to believe this way, you have to do it this way, it's not going to mean as much, and it's not really going to transform or change your life.
It's not freedom.
Absolutely.
It's not freedom. I have two sons that are actively involved in the military. And, as much as I love what they do, sometimes it is confusing to me as to why they would do it. Okay, here I am, their dad, and I'm like, are you kidding me? You're fighting to protect this and that, and their argument right back to me is like, Dad, that's why we fight for that. That's why we keep doing it. We want, even though there's a protest that you might not agree with, Dad, the fact that we can see that protest, that's good. Yeah, that's good. So. You got a perfect point there. It's a volunteer military. Yeah. And if you're going to get somebody to volunteer for something, they must really believe in it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think, obviously, Merle, as you and I sit here, like, there's definitely a sense of bias. Like, we obviously believe that the country we live in, America, like, there's nowhere else I would want to live in. Absolutely nowhere else. And again, just the idea that we're not perfect. Yeah. And if we look at what America has struggled with, what America continues to struggle with, and not that we should always do the compare and contrast, but like, we're so much better off. I mean, what do they say? Like, our poorest of poor is still richer than in a lot of countries. I always kind of half jokingly, but like, we're the only country that has obese homeless people. Like, we have it pretty good here in America. And if that makes me biased towards America, then that's fine. I can live with that.
Yeah. And when I went back through and we were getting ready to do this show and doing some prep, you can just Google like crazy, like, what's the best country in the world? And you can get all kinds of different responses to that. And, we used to always say America was the best country in the world. Well, actually, if you Google that, there's lots of different reports. And it doesn't always rank in the best in the world.
Sure.
What it does do is it always ranks in the top 4 or 5.
Sure.
Okay. And what you see is other countries now that have risen up are based a lot on the freedoms that America has.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're like, oh, okay, there's other countries that have modeled now what we are doing. And because it's good. It's good. And we said a million times already, not perfect, but good.
Yeah.
I think it's when we get our head all wrapped around what's bad in this country, we forget just how much is great in this country. I think of the humanity, the philanthropic efforts that we put
That's
out there.
That's a big word.
That, I know, I had to look it up, yeah. But just that idea that this country is more giving than any country on the planet. And it is amazing to me that, people complain about big business all the time. And listen, there's a lot of corruption in big business. There's a lot of greed there, and there's a lot of things that could be using reform. But there is a lot of money that people take in and then give back out for the sake of humanity. More so, I mean, if any disaster or tragedy happens around the world, our pockets go out. Yeah. And our services go out, and our military goes. I mean, we go out to serve, and more so than any other country. And you could say, well, yeah, you should because you have the money. There's a reason why there's the money. There's a reason why we have the resources. And so, that's a cool thing.
Yeah, and I think that kind of exemplifies the American spirit that I truly believe that every single person deep down inside of them, when tragedy does happen, look at when 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
You put the call out there, and the number of people that respond is so much better and so much. I mean, that again, that's what makes us different than other places. Doing things like that, giving your money, giving your time, that's not a normal human behavior. But we have been taught that here in America that's what makes us better. That's what we do. And again, if anyone out there is listening and you were not born in America, like, that's okay. Like that again, that's what makes us so awesome is that we accept all walks of life. But when you come here, we want you to be a part of that American spirit, that giving, that idea that we're in this together.
Yeah. You make a great point there. The idea that we come in and we want to make it better. When you look at the generational pass down, like what the generation before you passed down to the next generation, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that would ever say, well, I hope I leave the next generation worse than with my generation.
Right.
It's somehow written in our hearts that we want to leave it better.
Yeah.
Okay. And for the most part, it does tend to be left better, but not always, right? There have been wars, there have been tragedy, there have been national and international problems that all of a sudden there's a bump in the road, as you kind of described earlier about our current situation. But the goal, or how it's written on our heart, is I still believe everybody has it in their heart, I want to leave things better for the next generation than they are today. Okay. And so I think that that's a motivating factor for us. And so when we think about that, it's like, well, so what do I need to do to help things be better for the next generation? Not, and here's where we have to be careful, not just for a select group of the next generation.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is a very complex country with lots and lots of different people, lots of different needs. And so, putting all your focus to make one particular group incredible at the expense of all the others is not how we can focus. You've got to keep the whole machine running, and that's a tough balance to do.
Sure. And I think it goes to that idea that, right now more than ever, the emotions are high right now in our country. And we've talked about it multiple times on this show. Like, if that idea we want to leave the next generation better than the way we found it, we can't go about it with an emotional mindset, because we have to think logically and put certain things in place in order to make sure that the next generation is better off than we were. So if we go about it with an emotional idea, this emotional state, we're not going to be able to think logically, and it's not going to end well. If you start to, if this country is run purely on emotions, it's going to go a different direction than we are currently now. Yeah. And some people may think that is a different state, like a different way that we need to go. But just remember that when decisions are made, like, they need to be based off of facts. They need to be based off of history and what has worked in this country. And again, if we just go about it with that emotional state, a lot of times it's gonna.
We get mad, right?
Yeah.
We see something we don't like,
exactly,
and we get mad. And then when we get mad, we do and say things that in the long run are not always going to be helpful.
Right. Yeah. And not, again, those emotions are good to have. Like, I think it, again, we live in a country where you can have free emotions. But remembering that, yes, we're not a perfect country, but we are moving, and we're moving in a different direction, in hopefully a better direction. But again, those can't be based off of those pure emotions. Yeah.
So, as we start to kind of run down through this, you look at patriotism, and what is patriotism? And, patriotism is basically not about celebrating how things are today. Patriotism is about having a sense of gratitude and thanks for what the people, the generation or generations before you laid down. Okay. Yeah. So it's a thanks. It's a day of thanks. And, what we really, I look at this more and more, the patriotism problem, the divide that we have. I look at more and more like I do when I'm working with relationships, when I work in a marriage, the idea that you're going to see whatever you focus on. Yeah. Okay, you are going to see whatever you're going to focus on. And so when you get a couple that comes in, and we've talked about this before on shows, you get a couple that come in, and it didn't matter how much they were in love early in the relationship, when they come in to see Linda or I, things are usually not good, and so they see nothing but the bad. That's what their focus is, and they're angry, and they're upset, and they're emotional, and they can go through and create a list of everything they hate about each other, okay? And they forget all the work they did prior because it's not right in front of their nose. And that's a lot of what we're seeing right now. The storm is stirred, and the news is not good, right? Every time I turn on the news, it's just another negative. And we have to, when I teach patriotism to my kids, it's not about what's happening today. It's about thinking, okay, how did we get where we are?
Sure.
What was great that led us, and again, there could be negatives in the past. We need to right those. We need to work on writing. And we have processes to do that here in this country.
Sure.
We have laws that can be changed, and there are mechanisms to do that. So that's the growth part you were talking about before. We're always moving towards something that hopefully is better. But patriotism in itself is a thanks and a gratitude for what people did before us, okay?
Right.
And focusing on that. And so when I would encourage you on this 4th of July and this week that we're in, just take a break from all the news and just think about, man, look at what we have here. Look at the goodness that we have. Mm-hmm. Look at what this country's been able to do. And for one day at least, stop looking at all of our shortcomings.
Yeah.
Because if that's what you want to look at, that's what you're going to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, this 4th of July, realize that as strong dads here, we are never going to advocate throwing our hands up and saying whatever. It is what it is. This country, similar to your marriage, has to be worth fighting for. Yeah. And again, not all of us are in the military. Not all of us are truly on the front lines fighting for our country. But there's things we can do here on the homestead to actually fight for our country. Continue to believe in the American dream. Continue to believe that it is there. It is for everyone. That all men were created equal. That we believe for justice for everyone. There's things that we can do to continue to fight for this country. Because again, at the end of the day, I truly believe every American has that in their gut. Every American wants what's best for this country. Again, some people think it looks a little bit different. What is best for you may not be best for me. But again, that's the cool thing of America.
Right.
We're not forced to say, okay, we have to go about it this way. So I just think that the idea of patriotism, everyone has to have a little bit of it in them and realize that patriotism means fighting for our country.
Yeah, keeping the groundwork in place, not blowing everything up. And you remember that phrase, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater?
I do.
Remember that phrase?
Yeah. That's like an old man phrase.
Yeah, that's an old man phrase. And that's what we see right now. And especially, it's a little sad when you see a lot of young people who are so upset with this nation because they're seeing it only from their limited time of view. And it's not to say that what they're seeing is wrong, because it's what they're seeing today.
Sure.
But it dismisses what was laid down prior. And that's the part that we have to be really careful about. It would be really important to sit down with some of these folks and say, okay, wait, let's look at what we have, and let's save and build on what we have. And the things, that are not right, whether it's racism or whether it's a poverty level thing or whatever, let's go after it.
Yeah.
But let's keep the tools to allow us to do that.
Yeah.
So
good stuff. I think the conversation is good. Kind of as we start talking about, some of the things we want you guys out there to kind of walk away and to some good takeaways for this. When we kind of were figuring out how we wanted to go about this, I jotted down the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that, and a lot of times gets taken for granted. I know for me, this is something every day at the beginning of a school day. That's what we did. We did the Pledge of Allegiance. Mm-hmm. It's sad to think that might not be around for my girls. But I think the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm going to read it here in a second. I think it's so powerful, and it's such an awesome reminder of what patriotism, what our country really stands for. There's so many different symbols that our country has that really stand for freedom and stand for what we believe in as a core in our country. And I think the Pledge of Allegiance is just a great takeaway, a great thing to never forget in our country. That idea that, it says, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Man, that justice for all, to me, always kind of strikes a chord. We are a country that we believe, again, all men created equal, justice for all.
Right.
We're one nation under God. There's so many cool little takeaways, so many cool little reminders to me about what patriotism really stands for. And those are the things that I want to teach my girls about, kind of the good of America.
Yeah, and it needs to be for all people, for justice for all, liberty and justice for all. And so when we see a group or people that are not getting that, then that's our responsibility to work to get that.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's one of those things that don't throw out the mechanisms to keep that in place, because we have them here.
Yeah.
We have them. So anyway, that's a great thing. And so our challenge here, as Strong Dads, just take some time on this 4th of July and this week. Just take some time to just talk to your kids about some of the history of this country. Start to shine the light a little bit on more than what they're seeing today in the news.
Yeah.
That's what I love, talking to older men. I was training with an older gentleman today who's 80-some years old.
Sure.
And I love when he just starts talking about how things were back in his day. And he doesn't ever say the good old days.
Right.
He just this is what we did back then, and here's how things rolled. And to me, I'm getting a new perspective because I didn't see things the way he did.
Yeah.
Right? And so have that conversation with your kids. Let them start to see different perspective. That's why, we don't just throw out the older generation, because we have to learn from them. So they're a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, definitely this 4th of July, spend some time with your family, friends, whoever, and let's celebrate America. Let's celebrate the good that we have here, because there's a lot of countries that don't get to celebrate the good in their country, because sometimes there's a lot of negativity there. So yes, is our country very divided right now, very emotionally driven? Absolutely. I don't think there's any denying that. But again, we get to have the 4th of July. We get to have a day to truly celebrate our country.
Yeah.
And how cool that really is.
All right, very good. All right, so we want to wrap it up again. We do want to wish everybody a happy 4th of July and enjoy your summer day. We want to thank Mansfield Insurance Agency for being a sponsor of Strong Dads. I almost gave the wrong show. And also for the Crimers Beer House for coming alongside of us. So appreciate all they do. If there's anything that we can help you with at Rock Solid Families through marriage, family coaching, parenting, or even fitness, come on in, give us a call. You can call us at 812-576-7625. Also, do us a favor. If you like what you're listening to, take the time to go on to whatever platform that you're listening, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and give us a 5-star rating. If you like the message, if you like what we're trying to do here, that's how we get it out to more ears. And so please take a minute and do that. We would greatly appreciate it. Other than that, you got to do your job.
All right, I got to do it. Go out there and meet some strong dads.
Hey, this is Merle Hutchinson from Strong Dads. Strong Dads wants to thank Mansfield Insurance Agency in Bright, Indiana for sponsoring today's Strong Dads podcast. Established in 1981, the Mansfield Insurance Agency has been dedicated to the individuals and businesses in Bright, Indiana, serving clients throughout Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky.